Are you serious about your health and fitness, but overwhelmed by the conflicting information and BS all over social media? Welcome to Fit Facts. Brought to you by Brandon Pascual and Gabe Erno. With a combined 10 years of training experience, this physical therapist and personal trainer duo bring you the most up-to-date and applicable fitness and lifestyle tips based on the most cutting-edge research, bridged with field experience of what actually works and is sustainable for the long term. Enjoy. Today's video is all about how to build an effective training program as a beginner. Now, before we jump in, I've actually created an ebook that is specifically for beginner lifters. So this is a 10-week program for gaining muscle and strength while staying pain-free, boosting your testosterone levels, just building a better overall quality of life. Now, I made this ebook with complete in-depth workouts that go down to the specific reps, sets, rest times. Everything is literally laid out for whoever follows this ebook. In addition, I put in, lifestyle, diet, mindset tips. So this is an amazing thing that someone can follow this. It's a 10-week program, and their body will transform. I actually built this ebook based on clients of mine who've had the best results, and I kind of took all that knowledge and put it together. So if you guys are beginner lifters, this is an amazing opportunity for you. Go check out that ebook in the description. But either way, we will be diving deep into the principles that I used to create this ebook in this podcast. So whether you get that ebook or not, today we are actually going to be going over tips on how to build an effective training program as a beginner, and then actually habits and mindsets to implement as well. So first, what is a beginner? Now, there's a lot of different ways to define beginner. I'm going to give a couple definitions really quick. So my favorite, just general definition for a beginner lifter is just anyone who has less than a year of consistent training experience. When I say consistent, that means no more than a 2-week break at any time throughout that year. So if maybe you lift consistently for 3 months, then you take a month and a half off, then you come back on, take a month, you're not a consistent, right? Yeah. So I'm not going to say you're at that intermediate point. So that's really what we're going to base this off of for this episode's purposes. However, just to point out, other definitions, when we get more nitty gritty with like strength progression, oftentimes like power lifters or bodybuilders will actually look at the rate of progress that you are able to make. So for like strength specifically, once you can no longer add weight pretty much every week to the bar, you probably are more in that intermediate stage. Because as a beginner, you start squatting with the bar. After that week, you add 5 pounds. Next week, you add another 5 pounds. Maybe now it's 2.5, but you're progressing every week, maybe adding reps.
That's like the newbie gains that people talk about, right?
That's just pure newbie linear progress, right? Once that slows, maybe you're not a beginner anymore. And for, from that muscle building standpoint, it's a little different. It would be like how many pounds of muscle you can put on each year, because when you're a beginner, it varies a lot based on like genetics, all these different factors, lifestyle, training. But as you get more advanced, it slows down to where you're lucky to put on 2-3 pounds of muscle on in a year, right? The reason I don't want to necessarily use that though is because so many things affect it. Like I have been lifting now for 4 years, and I feel that I'm making almost my best progress in this 4th year because now I understand these principles, my diet's better, all these things are in place right now. So I don't want people to think like they're limited in that way. So again, we're defining a beginner as anyone who has less than a year of consistent training experience. What do you think about that definition? Would you agree with that?
I would agree with that just because, especially when you said consistency, because there are those people who would say that, I'm finally working out for the first time. They do it for 2 months, 3 months, and then drop off. Totally. And they'll restart all over in like another several months. And then I feel like their body definitely just kind of like forgot everything, especially the movement patterns. And even if they could, because being consistent is like the main goal for any kind of workout program.
Truly is. With anything in life, honestly. So there's people out there I know who they've been training like all in all for like 6+ years, and their results are really mediocre, and it's ultimately because they're not consistent.
Yeah, because their mindset is like all about like being seasonal gym goers, I guess.
Yeah, it's reactive, right? Like, I'm looking bad, let me jump in. But this is for people who really actually want to do what it takes to get the progress they desire. So the first point I want to make is you need to identify what your goal is. So many people go into the gym and they do these workouts without actually ever considering, why am I doing this? And then to take it even further, if they did stop to consider what their goal is, they would oftentimes find that what they're doing is not actually going to help them accomplish their goal. So what I mean by this is there's this principle of specificity, right? And what that means is that if you train a certain way, your body is going to adapt that way. So let's say that you want to train to become really strong. You want to train in ways that are conducive to becoming really strong. If you go bike riding for 100 kilometers 4 times a week, that's training a different adaptation. That's training how to become really good at endurance training. So a lot of people will do it a little more subtly where maybe they'll say like, I want to become jacked. But then they go into the gym and all they're doing is focusing on like how much weight they can lift up on the bar. Strength is a part of gaining muscle, but it's not the only way, right? It's not the only part. There's actually different focuses we want to have. So first you need to think, all right, what's my goal? Now for this podcast, we're going to be specifically operating out of the goal of anyone who wants to increase muscle mass, increase overall strength, essentially just being more jacked and healthy. And naturally, you're going to lose some weight as a part of this, but this is really the main focus of this. Have you seen people who kind of do that where they're doing these exercises or these workouts without actually ever realizing like, wait, this actually isn't helping me accomplish what I want to accomplish?
Oh, 100%. Like a lot of my friends, they would tell me like, oh, I'm trying to get my chest jacked or I'm trying to build better shoulders. And then I see them doing like more bow ropes and they would do it and superset it with like some kind of like Arnold press. I mean, which is fine, but you're still training that different body system, which is the endurance system instead of that muscle building system.
Totally. That's going to be, more cardiovascular.
Exactly. So that's why that principle of specificity is really important.
And this is just one of the most common things I see. The last example I'll give is like women who want to grow their glutes. They want bigger glutes. And then you see them and they don't know any better. It's not that they're doing this intentionally, but they just follow these like body weight Instagram band workouts.
Yeah.
Where they're just doing like these side band walks or these little like body weight hip thrusts.
Or doing the Stairmaster for like 60 minutes.
Where they like, do like, I walk forwards for 20 minutes, I walk sideways for 20 minutes, and I kick my foot back for the last 20 minutes. And it's, you're going to feel it in your glutes, but that's not actually the right adaptation. It's not inducing the right adaptation of strength and muscle gain. So that's what we're about in this podcast. So point number 2 is going to be you need to focus on learning proper movement patterns and techniques for the compound movements. So what I mean by that is think your squat, your bench press, your deadlift, your chin up, right? These really basic movements that they're simple, but they're complex. There's a lot that goes into them. And if you just go into the gym and you never learn these, you're going to leave so much results on the table, not only in muscle mass that you could potentially gain and strength, but also just performance. Like it's going to translate to every area of your life. So you really want to incorporate these movements, but you also don't want to jump into it and just start doing these without knowing how to do them properly, because then that's where you're at the risk of, injuring yourself. Like you obviously know that firsthand, right?
Yeah, like actually when I have fitness clients, I always have a hard time training fitness clients that have worked out with a trainer before versus someone who's never had exercise experience. So I always have more success teaching someone proper mechanics when they don't have any prior exercise experience because they don't have anything to go off of, versus the person who was exercising before. They already had like a program in them where like their body's programmed to do like a deadlift, they'll do it inefficiently instead of the correct form, or when they squat they'll do it inefficiently instead of the correct form.
Totally.
So it's really important to lay down the foundations in the beginning of any kind of workout program, especially if you're a new beginner.
And this is the part that can be frustrating for some people who are eager to get into the gym, to start progressing. And I've had clients where they're like, let's go, let's up the weight, and I tell them, you're not ready for that. Your form wasn't right. And that's not what you want to hear. But if you look in the long term, right? If you learn a movement improperly, like a squat, and you're doing it in a way that maybe in the short term it's not actually like damaging anything, but in the long term you have a higher chance of back pain. You're just not going to be able to lift as much weight. And well, if you map that out in the future, okay, you don't have as much strength potential, so you won't be able to potentially gain as much muscle. Also, you're going to have a higher chance of injury. You probably will injure yourself eventually. And then when you're injured, you're not going to be lifting.
Yep.
So if you take, an extra 2 to 3 months, which is much more than it's going to take most people to learn these movements to the point where they can do them safely. But if you took that amount of time, sure, you're not really gaining tons of muscle for 2 or 3 months, but then think about all the time you don't miss with injuries, all the weight you're able to use, and the positive range of motion that you're like able to implement because you're doing this properly. That's going to be years and years of better progress.
Yeah, you're able to prevent those setbacks in the future if you address it initially.
Totally. So what I recommend for that is, YouTube is a great platform, right? Like when I was in high school, I learned how to do most, techniques on YouTube, and
Nice.
and that was helpful, but it was limited, right? Like I had decent body awareness from playing sports and things, and I'm a good visual learner, so I definitely was able to pick them up. And overall, make progress, all these things. But there were just limitations that because of my own specific body structure, because I didn't have somebody assessing me, there were still ways that I did have some injuries that could have been prevented if I had learned them even better.
Exactly.
So that's why ultimately, if you can afford to hire a personal trainer, as a beginner, even if it's just for 1 month, even if you just come in and you say look, I got the Fitness Unlocked ebook, I got Gabe's ebook, I already know the workouts I will be doing, or it doesn't even have to be me, you find a workout program on the internet, I know what I'm going to be doing down the line, but for just 1 month, I just want to learn the proper technique on these core lifts, your squat, your bench, your deadlift, your row, your chin up, all those things. Then after that, I can go on my way, I'll follow this program. And, sure, it's not maybe going to be the same as continuing to train with a trainer, but for someone who maybe doesn't have the budget to just constantly train with a trainer, it's a really good option. Just get 1 month with that trainer, learn the things properly, and that is going to benefit you for the rest of your life.
Yep, it just sets yourself up for success to meet those goals more efficiently.
Exactly.
Setbacks.
Exactly. So that's point number 2. Point number 3 is going to be understand basic movement patterns and base your program off of these. So in the program that I have created for you all, there are certain types of movement patterns that I programmed in because these movement patterns are twofold. Number 1, if you hit every one of these movement patterns, you're going to be training pretty much every muscle in your body, so you'll be able to grow your physique really well. Number 2, when you're training all these movement patterns, you're moving through not all, but most of the ways your body moves that will help you function better and prevent pain. Now, in this program, I didn't put them all in. So, for instance, what would this be? Sagittal, coronal, frontal plane movement,
okay.
Stepping side lunges or something. I didn't really include that in this program. But, most of all those things I have included. So, guys, let me break it down for you. Number 1, we have a push, all right? Now, when we have a push, you can think of both a vertical push or a horizontal push. So, horizontal push would be like a bench press. Vertical push, overhead press.
Yep.
Right off the bat, you're working tons of muscle groups in your upper body with that. So, the overhead press is working your shoulders, it's working your upper back, it's working your triceps. There's so many muscles involved. Same thing with the bench press, right?
Yep.
Then we go to our pull pattern. We have a vertical pull and a horizontal pull. Think for the vertical pull, a pull-up or a lat pull-down. For the horizontal pull, we have a bent over row or a single arm dumbbell row, right? Again, same thing with the back. You're working so many muscles of the back as well as the arms, as well as the rear of the shoulders. So these types of patterns, if you focus on covering your bases with each pattern, making sure you have a movement for each pattern in your workout, you're covering all the muscles of the body pretty much, right? The last couple patterns are going to be a hinge. Hinge would be like a deadlift or a Romanian deadlift. I have a rotation in here because I think it's really important to have a rotational element, like a cable chop or something like that. And then lastly, something you actually told me to add in, I didn't have it added in until you mentioned, is a carry. So this is going to be training pretty much all the muscles of your body to maximize your muscle growth potential, but it's also helping to set you up for a body that doesn't end up becoming limited because you're neglecting certain movement patterns. Brandon, why do you think that carry is so important? Because you had convinced me, oh, I should include that carry. Why would you say it's so
I think
important?
carry is important because I give it to people to increase their body awareness, because when you're carrying something heavy, you need to know you're using the right muscles. Some people, they'll just use straight up bicep and shoulder, but you can kind of activate some of the postural muscles there as well. And also it's very functional in terms of someone carrying groceries. A lot of people can get some kind of injury there. So, it's very functional. It translates to everyday life. And I do like the farmer carries, and then progress to like a single arm carry, like a suitcase carry.
Farmers carries, I put them in your program, guys.
Yep. Yeah, so the farmer carries are actually probably the best ones to add there, because you are activating those back stabilizer muscles.
Yeah, so farmers carries is essentially you're carrying some heavy dumbbells, heavy kettlebells, or whatever. You're just carrying them at your side, making sure to retract those shoulder blades back and down, and we're just walking with an engaged core.
Exactly, and I do like how you structured this program, because the way you said it, like push, pull, hinge, lunge, rotation, carry, you're having this person that's looking or listening to our podcast. They're not looking at it as today's going to be a chest workout, chest and arms. Today's not going to be like a leg day. It's going to be more of a movement day. So which movement are we focusing on? Push? All right, cool. We're going to do our bench press. We're going to do our shoulder press. And also even squat is also considered a push as well.
Yes, and actually I neglected to mention that I have a squat in there as well for you guys, because I think a squat is a key element of a movement pattern as well.
Yep, same thing. It's very compound and gets all the major muscle groups. Good bang for your buck.
Exactly.
Like that.
And as a beginner, the next thing I want to say is that when we're training, your muscles are so new, right? They're going to grow so easily if you do this properly, that you don't want to really waste your time on accessory exercises, meaning that, okay, I'm going to train my chest, I'm going to do a cable fly, or I want to train my back, I'm going to do a straight arm pull down, or my bicep, I'm going to do a curl. Don't get me wrong, we do want to do these to a degree, right? But we don't want to make the core foundation of our program these accessory exercises. We want to do things that are going to just give a big bang for your buck. You do a squat, you're working your quads, you're working your glutes, you're working muscles of your lower back, your core, right? There's just so many different muscles involved. Then what I do in this program for you all, and what I recommend you do if you're creating your own program, is then as a beginner you can say, okay, what are some other areas that I really want to disproportionately focus on? Like, have my arms been always small and I really want to bring those up? Okay, now maybe in addition to the rows, the presses that are already hitting those muscles, let's add in some isolation for them, like, bicep curls, or, for your shoulders, lateral raises. And these are things that I structured into this workout very intentionally, because there's going to be muscles that either people are usually want to bring up more than others, because it just gives a very nice physique look, but there's also muscles that just tend to be harder to develop for most people.
Yeah.
So that is, what I would say about accessories. Any things to add on there, Brandon?
I'd probably say, don't focus too much on accessories unless you actually do feel like it's lacking in your body.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you're pretty much hitting those same muscle groups, just not in isolation with those compound movements.
Exactly. And as a beginner, your muscles are primed to grow. They don't need a lot of volume already. So once you're hitting with those compounds, you're going to be good in most areas. What I would say again for an exception is I noticed that for whatever reason, my arms wouldn't really grow with just compounds. I did need to do some extra isolation for my arms. So you'll be able to individualize as you go throughout the program.
Yep.
Number 4 is going to be the point that progressive overload is king, guys. Progressive overload is going to be one of the most important foundational principles that will set you up for success. Brandon, go ahead and just break down what is progressive overload for the audience.
So progressive overload is pretty much you want to do an exercise and you want to gradually get better at it by either you could be increasing weight, you could be increasing the range of motion, you could be doing a certain tempo. You're pretty much progressing your exercise, but slowly. It's all about gradual progress. Because if you, let's say for one extreme, you stay at the same weight for about 4 weeks, you'll still get some good results because you're a beginner, but your results won't be as good as if you were to progressively increase your weight or increase the range of motion or depth of your squat or bench press.
Totally.
Yep. And then the other extreme is if you, let's say you squat, 135 one week, and the next week you just throw on another 45. So you're squatting 225 next week.
Yeah.
That's like the opposite of the previous example. That's not progressive overload. That's just recipe for some kind of injury waiting to happen.
Yeah, exactly.
That now just like cause more injury, which will impede your fitness goals.
Yeah, so with progressive overload, it's really about every time you perform an exercise, every time you repeat a certain day of your program, you want to have tracked. So tracking is crucial, guys. You want to have tracked what you did last time on what the weight you did and what the reps you did were. And if you are performing this exercise again, your main goal needs to be increasing the amount of reps you did or increasing the weight.
Reps, yep.
Now, definitely there's other ways to induce progressive overload, like shortening rest times, playing with increasing range of motion, things like that. For a beginner, we can keep it simple and just focus on reps and weight, right? So if you're coming in and you're getting stronger and it's actually objectively stronger because you did more weight or you did more reps, you're making progress. If you wonder why you're not making progress and you look and you haven't been getting stronger, well, there is a huge reason why. So that's, again, progressive overload needs to be the focus. And if you're not tracking your workouts, it's harder to actually hold yourself to that. So I highly recommend, whether it's on your phone or a little notepad, actually tracking what you do each workout.
Yeah, because it's good to compare yourself to what you did last week. Let's say you were able to hit 12 reps of some kind of deadlift variation for a weight. So the following week you could say, maybe I could either increase the weight or I could increase the reps.
Yeah.
So, and you can experiment with your program to see what works best for you.
Yeah, exactly. And if you're maybe not feeling super strong that day, maybe you don't want to throw more weight on yet, just try to add one rep over the course of all 2, 3, 4 sets, whatever it is. If you're feeling extra good, you can go add some weight. But the thing is that if you, like, a lot of people will come into the gym and they'll be like, I don't really feel great today. Like, I'm just going to train how I feel. And they're not looking at, like, any tracking. So they're just like, oh, yeah, I feel like I trained hard enough. But if they actually had looked at the number and said, I did 12 reps. Okay, let me at least try for 13. Almost always, they're going to be able to still hit that PR. So, come on, guys. Like, actually track your shit.
Yeah.
Next is going to be some must-dos. Or is that... No, next is actually programming according to what is conducive to your lifestyle. So, Brandon, I'm sure you were telling me a story about, like, in college you used to, like, wake up super early and you do like an hour of cardio and train like 7 days, 6-7 days a week, right?
Yeah, and then I felt like I was, so I felt pretty disciplined when I did that. So I would wake up like super early before my classes, 5 a.m. Stairmaster, and then do a 2-hour weightlifting session after.
Wow.
And then I would pretty much kind of sacrifice it's kind of disgusting, my shower time before my 8 a.m. class, and even sacrifice like eating, or I would eat like pretty much in lecture also. And I would also kind of have to sacrifice my sleep as well. So that story is brought up because what I'm doing with that workout program is I'm pretty much letting that workout program take away like certain aspects of my lifestyle, which is the opposite of what you want. You want your workout program to fit your lifestyle.
Totally. And like if your biggest priority in life is just getting jacked and strong and you're willing to let other things suffer, that's fine. But I'm telling you, it's not necessary as a beginner, because most beginners, I'm going to say all beginners actually, all beginners will be able to make fantastic progress working out 2 to 3 times a week.
Oh, yeah.
One of my recent clients, he put on like 20 pounds of muscle, some fat too, but a lot of muscle within the span of 10 weeks. He worked out with me 2 times a week.
Yep.
And he put on 20 pounds of almost pure muscle.
Yep. And that's how one of my newest clients that I got over in the summer, she only worked out with me 2 times a week. And the only activity she was getting was with me, besides like doing walks at work or whatever. And she lost about almost 25 pounds.
Exactly. So people truly overestimate how much they actually need to do. But when you're doing everything properly, you don't need to train as much as you think. And that's why with these workouts that I recommend, you're doing full body workouts, right? We're focusing on these big bang for your buck compound movements like a bench press, like a squat, these movements that are working many different muscle groups with one movement so that you don't need to do it as much, because if you're doing those movements 2 to 3 times a week, you're hitting every muscle in your body multiple times. It's great. So guys, that is definitely a recommendation for any beginners out there. Number 6, these are some must-dos, Brandon. Why don't you start with the first one?
Well, must-dos is you got to train hard.
Train hard, guys.
Yep, and I'm talking like, just like what we said about progressive overload, you got to make sure that you're actually like challenging your body. You can't just go in there and half-ass and go through the motions. You actually have to push yourself and try to really feel that muscle contraction, feel that burn for it, and you really want to be consistent in pushing yourself to an extent, of course, because you don't want to injure yourself.
Totally.
But you really want to be pushing yourself just so you can give your body that muscle growth or that muscle stimulation to grow muscle.
Totally. Now, for most beginners out there, if you are adding weight or reps to the bar every week, you know, you're probably pushing yourself hard enough, right? Because you're constantly getting stronger. What I will say is I like to use this term called reps in reserve to focus on how hard you should be training. Reps in reserve refers to if you are going as hard as you can and you went all the way to failure and you just can't get the bar up and you fail, that's 0 reps in reserve, right? You had no reps left. And what I'm basing that on is using the same form throughout. So a lot of people, they start to bench press, it gets harder, they start to bounce the bar a little bit. We're not doing any of that shit. If we have a certain technique that we use that technique and that technique only, at least in this scenario that I'm talking about. So if you're squatting to a certain depth and that weight starts to get hard, you don't go a little higher so that you can get more reps. You keep squatting to that same freaking depth, and once you fail, that's 0 reps in reserve. Well, I don't want you guys training to complete failure. I want you trying to hover in between 1 to 3 reps in reserve. That will feel very challenging. That will be uncomfortable. You're going to have to really push yourself, but it's going to be that point where you're like, okay, like gun to my head, I probably could have done 1 more rep, 2 more reps. So if occasionally you do go to that failure point, it's okay for that to happen. And I actually encourage it once you're very confident with your technique. But generally staying between that 1 to 3 reps in reserve is going to be the best, to where you're not tearing your body down to the point where it's hard to recover and your injury risk is really high, but you're still pushing yourself enough to induce the muscular adaptations and the strength that we want.
Yep. And then what's the second must-do?
Guys, you got to eat enough to fuel your progress. Now, since we're specifically talking about getting stronger, gaining muscle, you need to fuel your body, all right? You need to eat in what's called a caloric surplus, specifically with adequate macronutrients, which we'll jump into right now. So we need to have adequate protein intake. Brandon, I mean, you see a lot of clients out there who I'm sure you've trained who just don't eat enough protein, and then they wonder why they're not getting the results they want.
Yeah, like I would have them train, or I would have them track their meals on some days just to build that awareness. And then they're all like, oh yeah, I've had maybe 60 grams of protein. And then they'd be like, oh, but I thought 60 grams is a lot. I'm like, no, you weigh like 160, so you should be eating at least like 140 or 130 grams of protein.
Exactly, yeah. That's I think probably 130 would be the good minimum number there. I like to say 0.75 grams per pound of body weight. That is, let's say you eat a little less, not the end of the world. You can still have solid progress. Let's say you eat a little more, also totally fine. But around 0.75 grams a pound, 0.75 grams of protein per pound of body weight, meaning 150 grams of protein a day for a 200-pound individual. If you're not getting close to that, you are severely hampering your body's ability to gain muscle, gain strength, and recover. And like you said, like I've had most of my clients, I'll just have them be like, hey, track your protein just for one day so we get an idea where you're at. And they're always surprised by how low it actually is. So I highly recommend that, tracking to see where you're at. I actually had this vegan client. She was trying to do vegan keto.
Vegan keto?
Probably one of the most restrictive diets I've ever heard of.
That is very restrictive.
Well, I suspect that she wasn't eating enough protein because, we're doing pretty much everything she's supposed to do. And she's making progress, but it's a little slow. The strength gain is a little slower than I'd expect for someone at her level. And I had her track her protein. She was eating about 20 to 25 grams a day.
Damn.
Yeah.
Dude, that's very low.
So I had her, she was able to get up to, with some, things she implemented, I recommended to about 60 a day, which is still lower than I'd like it.
But it's a start.
But her progress was so much better. And what I also want to note here is we're not talking about the amount of protein that you need to just be like a healthy individual just existing. We're talking about the amount of protein you need to optimize muscle and strength gain, right? So you could be healthy eating a little less protein than this, but we're talking about if you really want to maximize the amount of muscle to put on your frame, make sure you're eating enough protein.
Exactly. I always tell my clients, prioritize the protein. I know it's a lot harder for someone trying to get into this lifestyle of prioritizing the protein, because when they eat something from like a restaurant or something they cook at home, it's mostly like a lot of carbs. Like they'll think it's high protein once you add like maybe 2 slices of chicken, which is like a slice like maybe like the size of like my 2 fingers right here.
Yeah.
Like that. And they'll be like, oh, it's high protein. So I always tell them, hey, prioritize the protein and always, overestimate how much or over order or overeat the protein that you'll have.
You're going to be fine if you eat a lot of protein. It's not like you're going to spontaneously combust. Maybe your farts might smell a little bit if you really eat a lot of protein, but you'll be okay.
Yep.
The second point in this understanding basic diet principles portion is, remember carbs are fuel. So a lot of people kind of demonize carbs with the whole keto diet and all this stuff, but if you want to maximize your strength and muscle gain, you need to perform in the gym. And well, carbohydrates give your body energy. They give your muscles the fuel to really exert themselves, to contract, to perform the functions we're trying to have them perform. So, just generally making sure you're eating enough carbs, which isn't hard for most people. Most people have fairly carb-heavy diets. And then a little bonus here would be making sure you have a good amount of carbs before a workout too. So
I'm glad you said that, because a lot of newer fitness clients, they'll straight up go to their first few weeks of training with me like fasted or eating no carbs at all. Like before and even after. And I try to educate them saying, hey, you need energy to perform, to build that muscle mass, and carbs are your fuel. So please look at carbs as fuel instead of just something to burn off.
100%. Yeah, and the last thing I'll say here is eat mostly whole foods. So, whole foods meaning like non-processed foods, chicken, sweet potatoes, vegetables, meat, fruit. That's going to be whole foods. It's going to be better for your body, more micronutrient rich. You're going to feel better. It's fine to have some processed foods. But eating mostly whole foods is going to be good for not only general health, but also just performing well.
Yeah, and I would always say like eat whole foods instead of like buying or like wasting your money on like protein shakes. Unless you feel like you don't have that time convenience to, cook something up or order something, then a protein shake is the way to go. But whole foods is a little better because of the way it digests. It's more pure and goes to the muscles, I guess.
Totally, and like I'm going to dive into some nuances of this more in the ebook, because I've had some clients who they have trouble eating enough calories to gain the muscle and the weight they want. They're like very skinny and it's hard for them to eat enough. In that case, it can actually be helpful to have more like shakes and things like that.
Okay.
So there's like kind of nuances about that, obviously, but that's very good. Like obviously general. And check out the ebook for some more deep dives on that. So the last thing we'll go over is just a couple basic success mindset principles, right? The first mindset principle you're going to need if you really want to succeed on your fitness journey is consistency over perfection. There's going to be times in this journey that you miss a workout or, you don't feel great, and, you don't just give up, right? If you miss a workout, you shouldn't just quit. You should just get right back on it. And for me, I do that sometimes where maybe I, for whatever reason, just wasn't able to get it on a certain day, which is rare because I prioritize this shit.
Nice.
Well, the next day I'm going in. It doesn't matter that I wanted to do it on a Wednesday and I missed Wednesday. Sure, it wasn't optimal that I have to do it on a Thursday now, but I'm still going to just get it in on a Thursday.
Yeah. Like for me, especially like when I was following this workout program, the MAPS anabolic, I did miss a few days because I was out of state. I was on like a vacation or whatever, and then I realized I was like, oh shit, I don't have a barbell to do these movements.
Yeah.
So honestly, I did mess up, and I straight up told myself, you know what, I'm just not gonna do the workout. So I pretty much skipped that day. But then the next day I was like, you know what, I just realized I could still do my lifts and get some kind of workout in, or get some kind of muscle stimulus in to stay consistent with my plan. So the workout doesn't have to be perfect as long as I'm still being consistent and dragging myself into the gym.
Yeah, I mean, there was times in some of my clients who were really successful with me, times in their program where they'd come in like 30 minutes late, and I'd be like, all right, is this great? No, can we still do, 2 really quality effective movements? Yeah, so we just do what you can,
Exactly.
So guys, a little bonus here, just don't get obsessed with the minutia. There's a lot of, things on Instagram where people are getting obsessed with the biomechanics of an exercise. Well, if you slightly angle your humerus in, instead of 37 degrees to 33 degrees, the sternal part of your chest is going to be stimulated 2% more. It's like, there's validity in all this stuff, but we don't need to get obsessed with the minutia. Focus on, the underlying foundational things that are going to bring you progress.
Especially if you're just getting started.
Exactly.
You don't want to focus on those fine details. Yep.
So guys, thank you so much for checking out the episode. If you have any questions at all, feel free to leave a comment below. I'll answer these all for free, obviously. If you are interested in this ebook, in following the specific program that I have created, go ahead and click that link in the description to check it out. So thank you so much for listening. Brandon, anything else you'd like to add before we sign out?
I just want to say definitely get a look at Gabe's ebook. And also I am working on a project of where I have my own online course. If you are new at lifting, this might apply to you as well. It's pretty much just assessing your own pain to make sure that when you go through, let's say, Gabe's program through his ebook, you want to make sure you're pain-free. So the online course will have assessments. It'll have some programs that'll help you get to more of like managing your pain better and helping you work through certain exercises that give you some kind of limitation. So that's something to look forward to as well.
And I'm really excited for when that comes out. So keep us updated.
Of course.
Guys, thank you so much for checking this episode out. I am Gabe.
I'm Brandon.
And this is Fit Facts. Peace.
Peace.